So now we're already heading towards the last talk of today. We have the last talk by Clemens Siebler from Microsoft, who will talk about scaling generative AI to all employees and beyond. Clemens Siebler currently helps clients to solve their business challenges using AI in his role as Senior Specialist for AI and EMEA at Microsoft. For the past 2 years, he has been pivoting the use of Azure OpenAI services in enterprise environments. Prior to working in his current role, Clemens held various roles as, for example, software engineer, solution architect, and technical manager. He studied computer science with a focus on machine learning and graduated from Karlsruhe Institute of Technology with a research experience at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, USA. Please welcome Clemens Siebler.
Thank you. And by the way, I'm also the guy who stands between you and the evening beer, so thank you for being here now. Yeah, so I've been working with customers for the last 2 years on the OpenAI space and the large language space, and I think we can all agree today that we are right now in the next platform shift, right? It was mobile for the last decade, and I think we've seen clearly today that the next, I wouldn't probably say decade, because everything moves so fast nowadays, but at least the next couple of years, I think, are driven by this generative AI trend. And if we sit back and actually observe what is happening, I think we need to realize that 2 things are currently happening in our world. And the first one being, these models actually change the user interface, how we as humans interact with machines, right? We come from a world of command lines to a world where we click and point our mouse, and I think now we are entering the world where we just tell the machine what it should do, and the machine will execute on that. And I think there will be an expectation by consumers in the next couple of months and years that this will become the de facto norm, and companies who do not actually adapt this new pattern will probably be left behind, especially I think in the consumer space. However, I think the second big change is that especially with GPT-4, we now have a reasoning engine that can reason over the data that we collected and created over the last decades, right? And I think historically in machine learning, right, we've always been very good dealing with numbers, doing predictions, doing forecasting, classifying, and whatever not. But NLP was always, sure, you could do a lot of things, but it was also pretty time-consuming, right? You needed a lot of expertise. And having a large language model like GPT-4 makes this super easy. And like reasoning over unstructured textual data, I would say anybody in this room, and I'm sure most of you have used ChatGPT, right, can actually do that. And we as Microsoft have the mission to actually empower every person and organization on this planet to achieve more. And I think this, again, is one prime moment for us to actually achieve that mission. Because I think, right, a lot of things in the business world happen by natural language, humans talking to humans. And, right, there will be some form of AI now intercepted in that way. And if you think about it, this can be a little bit scary, because I don't want to talk to you where 2 AIs are in the middle and helping with the conversation. So I think, and I want to set this clear here, is that we believe that the human and humans need to be in the driver's seat in this whole discussion, and you see this in all the products that we are bringing to market, that you are always making the final decision and not the AI. And I think it's up to us as a society and as a country to decide what we want this technology to do and what not. And there are certainly things where I personally would not feel comfortable with, and I'm sure you would not either. But speaking about driver's seat, I want to share a few examples on projects where our platform helped customers to launch their products. And the first one is Mercedes-Benz. You might have seen the press release from them a couple of months ago. Within very short time, they actually brought ChatGPT to the car. And I think this is a prime example how the new language interface will look like. Because I'm sure many of you have virtual assistants in the car, and you can do certain things in the car with your voice, but it's probably pretty basic. But if you now think one step further, where you can actually communicate with your car, and the car can communicate with you, give you more information about the destination, or for example, where you're going, this is obviously a pretty exciting experience. And they launched this, as I said, a couple of months ago as a pilot in the US, and I'm very curious to see how the adoption will be and how this will be scaled. The second example is we partnered with Siemens, and they are running a current project where they are revolutionizing how their Team Center, their PLM application works, right? Because again, also here, I think we can use AI to make the life of the user significantly easier, to help them with repetitive cognitive tasks, and make it more seamless for the user to achieve what they need to achieve. And yes, right, we can start with very small things and build up on them, but over time, this will mean that the productivity hopefully goes up. And I also wanted to show one quick example from overseas. AT&T, most of you know it, right, a telco provider. They, for example, use our platform with our Azure OpenAI service to actually increase employee productivity. So for example, in the contact center, actually give better responses to their clients, give more accurate responses, maybe give them quicker. Again, the human is in the control. However, the answers are now significantly faster given. And I have been working in this space now for 2 years, and I would say every day, also probably today, I just need to reflect on it a little bit, there's actually a new use case that I learn about with generative AI. So this is not an exhaustive list, it's just a very hand-picked list of use cases that I think are interesting. And the first one is the one that we see the most right now is how can we apply generative AI to derive information and new insights from our internal knowledge bases? And right, we all have been trying to solve this problem for many, many years. And it also won't be perfect with generative AI, don't get me wrong. But it will be significantly better, and we already see that it's significantly better than with traditional methods. The second one is, how can we actually revolutionize customer support? Because, right, we can use these models retroactively to look, for example, what happened in the contact center, what problems do our customers have, how did we solve them, how maybe can we solve them better, right? We can do this fully automated at very low cost nowadays. But we can also obviously use it to help agents or automate certain pieces when customers have certain challenges that they are dealing with. Even though I think, right, as soon as we do this more autonomously, we also need to think about the security measures, how to do it, that we actually give reliable answers to customers and not just tell them, yeah, something that the model fantasized about. Another one is hyper-personalization, and I think this is probably a little bit controversial because I don't think this is a great use case to start with. However, if you think about it, right, you get emails from companies that you follow where you buy products from all the time. I mean, I get them, you get them, right? And typically they're not very personalized. Maybe like a tiny bit, but I think with large language models, addressing the customer, how we as a company talk to a customer can be super personalized. And I think this will happen. The only challenge is, right, how do we make it safe that what we actually send to the customer is nice, correct, not racist, whatever it may be. So it's definitely not an easy use case, but it's an opportunity, I think, that these models eventually give us. And then the obvious one, I think, is also content creation. And I would argue content creation from what the model learns, right? If you ask ChatGPT to write a paragraph on topic X, it will probably happily do so. I think that already has been exploited. But once you mix it with your contextual proprietary data that you have in your company, you can probably use it to draft content significantly faster, maybe nicer written, maybe more personalized, whatever it may be, at extremely low cost. But the big one where we are focusing on at Microsoft is actually building copilots. And what do we mean with copilots? Basically, little pieces and features within products that actually help you to do certain cognitive tasks easier. And the idea here, obviously, is if we build a copilot, it needs to happen on your data, it needs to happen in your application so that your users can actually leverage it. And I'll go into detail now how we envision that this looks and how we are already doing it today. First one, over the last couple of months, Microsoft announced plenty of Copilot features. And quick check with hands, who used GitHub Copilot in the past? Right, GitHub Copilot is an AI pair programmer that helps you to write code. Again, it's the co-pilot, it's not the pilot, right? So you are still in control, but GitHub Copilot writes the code. I personally use it, and I write 80% of my code with it. It's awesome, but it's not perfect by no means, right? And we are building the same Copilot in Word. Some of you might have seen it, right? In the future, you will just say in Word, write me a draft for a document based on the customer meeting notes that I took here in OneNote, and boom, Word will generate the content and give you an initial draft. And this same feature will come to the Excels, to the Teams, to the Outlooks of this world, because that will be the new benchmark and the user expectancy that we will see. Again, it's called Copilot because the machine is just a Copilot, we are still the pilots. So Copilot basically, as a definition, an experience that uses generative AI to assist humans in highly complex cognitive tasks. And that could be anything from build me a slide in PowerPoint that shows the moon and some information about the moon, up to something, let's take Siemens as an example earlier, where you do something super PLM specific or something super industry specific with data that your application uses. Now, how do we build these Copilot stacks? The first one is on the lower layer, you obviously need to have some form of AI infrastructure. You obviously need to have your domain-specific data, right? Because I think these capabilities are pretty useless until you actually ingest data into the model in real time that is useful for your use case. And then we believe as a first step, you should leverage foundational pre-trained models. And the reason is not because it's available and it's cheap, but it's because we want to make sure that we get this off the ground quick and then iterate and optimize, right? Rather use something out of the box versus building your own model, which you probably maybe need to do later, but not as a starting point. Because our goal here is to create innovation and go fast and probably also fail, but then at the same time, optimize it over time, right? Nothing will be perfect, and nothing will ever be 100% perfect, right? Now, given this stack, which you can run on our cloud platform, everything fully managed, takes 1 minute to deploy, you will build an AI orchestration layer. And historically, we would have said, this is our business logic. Nowadays, I would say it's probably still some business logic, but it's all our prompts, it's our chain of prompts using semantic kernel, using LangChain, using barebone API calls, whatever you need to do in order to actually build the logic that produces a certain output. And then on top, you probably want to integrate this into maybe your own application, or maybe you want to expose this actually in the Microsoft ecosystem. You could think about, let's say you write a Copilot that takes normal English text or German text and converts it into, let's say, lawyer language. Obviously, it would be nice, since the users might already be in Word anyway, to expose this capability in Word, so you can tell the Word Copilot, hey, use the lawyer speech plugin to actually convert this. And then instead of using our technology, it would call your Copilot. Or maybe you want to expose it as a plugin to ChatGPT or Bing Chat, because we are compatible. Now, right, building this, I would say it's pretty straightforward, but in order to actually make this really work, what we need to do is this AI orchestration layer needs to do a lot of API calls to other services. Let's say different data sources. Let's say you need to talk to your SAP system to get something out, and then you need to push something back to the SAP system or somewhere else. And sure, you could do this manually, but on our platform, right, we have already thousands of connectors to these systems that you can use in a low-code approach, where the connection to these services is implicitly secured, and you can directly leverage these. So don't waste time on reinventing the wheel, just use the connectors to these systems that are already there. And that really enables us to build a Copilot that is connected to external systems where we pull and write data to. And this, I think, is really the advantage that we on our platform bring you, that you can build these things at very short time. Now, for the large language model side, right, hopefully everybody knows, right, we've been partnering with the company OpenAI for many years, and 1.5 years ago, we launched a product called Azure OpenAI Service, where we offer these large pre-trained models from OpenAI, like GPT-4, GPT 3.5, and so on our cloud platform that you can use as a service. We also recently launched Whisper, so we typically lag a few days behind OpenAI until we bring these models to our cloud platform. And these models are adaptable and also fine-tunable with your data if you really need to, even though as the first step, I typically do not advise for it because it's often not needed to build an initial MVP to get something going. Now, what makes the service? First of all, when you use this service, you are isolated from other customers, right? This is obvious. When you send data to the service, we do not use this data to train GPT-3 or GPT-4. In fact, you can configure the service that we don't even store the data. So it's a completely stateless service. So you send something to GPT-4, it creates your completion, it sends it back, but it never remembers anything except obviously the billing information, right? Yeah, we're still an American company, right? And last but not least, right, since we run in multiple data centers, you can choose the region where you want to. Maybe you want to run in the EU, maybe you want to run outside of the EU, it's up to you. But your data is protected by the most comprehensive controls, right? You are in full control. And since we are a global cloud with a lot of certifications, this is just another service that is equally certified as other services on our platform. Talk, SOC 2, HIPAA, and whatever it may be. Now, right, GPT-4 is an awesome model, but we realize it's not everything. So through our partner, for example, with Meta over the past couple of years, we partner with them on Llama 2, and right, you can now deploy Llama 2 with a single mouse click on Azure, and with a second click, you can even fine-tune it on our platform. And you can even run it on your Windows laptop if you want to. And right, there are even more, I would say, in Hugging Face, where we also have a partnership with thousands of other models that you can deploy with a single click. And again, right, it's all about choice, because there will be very special, very domain-specific, maybe small models that come at a different cost-performance metric, right? And we don't want to dictate just use GPT-4 and everybody's happy, even though GPT-4 is probably the most powerful model that you can use nowadays. We want to give you the choice, basically. And this can be open source, but can be closed source like GPT-4. And this brings me actually to where we stand today. We see a lot of customers, what I would call the first wave, where customers are starting to explore this technology. They start with internal use cases. And my advice is always use the off-the-shelf model. Start with GPT-4, right? Get the use case out of the door. Once you know it's working, you can always go to a cheaper, smaller, whatever model. But at least you learn, you can iterate, you can figure out if the use case works. Because that is right now, I think, for many companies, the first step. At the same time, we see some companies already here in Europe maturing to what I would call phase 2. And this is where external use cases come into play. Why would I say phase 2 only after phase 1, where we then do external use cases? Because a lot more can go wrong with external use cases, right? You don't want to send nasty stuff to your customers. So here we really need to make sure that the things that we talked about today, like responsible AI, are applied, and we can obviously help with that, right? Maybe even here now we need some fine-tuning. Could be, right? But again, the goal is to go quick and learn. And I think in phase 2, we need to learn how to scale it in production, which is a whole nother thing. Like, I currently work with clients who need to process 100,000 API calls to GPT-4 in 1 minute. That's a lot of compute you need, and building this, it's not straightforward. And this will be a learning for many of us once we actually build applications that go at large scale in production. But we can help with this. And then the third one, I think this is the most interesting one, but it's also the one where I don't think we are yet there, is what is the impact of this, right? We all somehow have the feeling that a lot of jobs will change, but we don't know fully yet how. but it will happen. And I think this is really then seeing how the workforce will be transformed, which jobs will be heavily assisted by AI, which ones won't. But I think once we reach that point, then this technology really becomes business critical because certain functions in our companies won't work anymore without it. And this at the same time will probably enable completely new business models. But I think it's maybe a little bit early yet to talk about this. I think this is something we'll see in the next couple of months and probably years. And this brings me to my last one. I think it's a pretty exciting time that we are in. A lot of things are happening very fast, right? But I think talking about this, figuring out what we want to do and what we don't want to do is super crucial. But I want to leave you with, right? Humans are not perfect. AI won't be perfect. But it's very important right now, I think, to learn, to get started, make mistakes, and learn from them and iterate and become better. And the technology will become better, our processes will become better, but it takes trial and error. And with that, I say thank you and enjoy the evening event.